one. Folks, we are live. Welcome to Talking Crit. The chaos has already started before we even went live. Not going to go into it, but trust me, we had chaos. We're working on it. With me, as always, is the one, the only auctioneer extraordinaire, Jim Kitchen. Well, I like the way that sounds. Auctioneer extraordinaire. And below us is my once-a-week work spouse, Bad Mike, occasionally known as Satan. Thyatis, listen, depending on where I'm from, 2 minutes is considered on time. For a Kickstarter, you'd be going 2 weeks late. It's early. It's on time.
Oh my God! Gould's in the audience. It's Wednesday nights.
Damn it! And I'm not getting fans.
Literally, we were having a fight about two things before the show started. One of them is we were having a discussion, an animated discussion about the 50th anniversary D&D book, which we'll get into. But more importantly, we were having a discussion that if you wanted to share Talking Crit with people, the problem is that it's lost in the sea of the Eric Tenkar experience. Do you like Tenkar's Tavern? Because hey, I got a video, and then I did another video, and then I wedged another video in between those two videos, and then I wrapped it in another video.
Something or other.
Hey, I turned around. I shot a video.
Hey, wait. When I was doing my active blogging, I used to do 4 to 6 posts a day. You should be happy you're only getting one video a day. Just saying.
Yeah.
Actually,
you're like the Cecil B. DeMille of videos. Ship it. Ship it. Ship it. God. Like, I like shave on Wednesdays and try to wear a nice shirt, and I feel like I should just live under an underpass and come out and be like, how you doing? What are you wearing?
All right, well, my problem is I shave on Thursdays. So, I got a whole week of growth going. I'm going to have to
my God.
shaving day.
Oh, my God. What a week.
I got shaving day.
Okay.
Where the hell do you work?
Shave. We'll have the video in 5 minutes.
By the
twice a day.
By the way, I'm not at my house. That's odd. I'm on South Padre. And last year, oddly enough. And you're seeing the beach because that's so. If I was set up on the beach, the surf is so loud that I cannot do. Pretty damn cool, but it can't. Because it's. I love the sound of the surf. So anyway, you see this. This is really. It looks like it was grandmade, decorated in 19. Terrible pictures on the wall. It's got a horse paint scheme. Old age. What can you say? 7th floor. We're not going to. It's spend that much time.
I love that I took my stuff on the road last week into Kentucky. And now I'm back in my volcano lair, and you somehow managed to take your internet connection problems with you. We're going to get you a fiber connection just for you to take everywhere.
This is this is actually in the condo.
Well, actually, it's better than it was when.
Not terrible, but it ain't great either. I may drop out.
Mike setting up his video. He'll have a video.
Issue. We expect a grainy Mike. That's okay.
And I don't know. I'm getting a lot of sun.
Okay, so I have an interesting email. I have an interesting email comment that I got, and I wanted to share. The comment was that we've had a couple of guests on recently who have had difficulties within their business practices. And so what I would say, my comment on this, and you can figure out whatever video it is that you would like to assign this to. But there's a very old and true saying that I would share in regards to anybody that comes on the chat who is in the role-playing game industry, and that is that hope is not a plan. Hope is not a plan. Well, I hope to fulfill. No, you plan to fulfill. You don't hope to fulfill. I hope to scale up. No, you plan to scale up. So please, if there are times where we seem brusque or perhaps extra sharp and pointy, it's because hope isn't a fucking plan. So please remember those words. Hope isn't a fucking plan. So I refuse to feel bad for somebody who's like, well, I threw the chicken bones, and because the stars are in alignment, we're going to be able to fulfill our Kickstarter.
Ooh.
I'm sorry.
I
got nothing but hate and contempt for that. So no, hope is not a plan. Hope is not a plan.
Damn it! It used to be part of a slogan.
I'm sorry, but really and truly, right? We give an infinite number of passes to people in this industry for doing things that frankly they should be tarred and feathered for, and the fact that we briefly, momentarily hold their feet to a fire that is not the raging surface of the sun they deserve. I think anybody who's like, no, I don't care. I really don't care. We're talking about people who have rooked hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars from people. And this is an unforgivable sin. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to launch into a rant, but really and truly, I got this email and it was like, wow, and I'm like, I don't hate my fellow man. I really do not hate my fellow man. Jesus may love some of these people, but my vote is still out on some of these. I really just cannot abide by this. And somebody sort of took a poke at how we have discussed failed Kickstarters, and that just really burns my business. So
we haven't been there. That's ridiculous.
No, I genuinely don't think so. And I watched Eric's chat with a recent failed. I watched Eric's recent chat with a failed Kickstarter delivery, or a person behind a failed Kickstarter, and anybody who thinks
a serial offender.
Yes, it's offensive. It's just grievously annoying when somebody's like, wow, listen, I am the most jovial guy in the world. I really, really, really am. But if you want to see my stone cold bitch angry face, you can watch me and listen. This stuff comes up and I'll lower the temperature in the room 30 degrees because I just have no tolerance for this. None whatsoever. So again, hope is not a plan. Hope is not a plan. And if you can't do it all on paper and make the numbers add up, you probably shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
Wow. And what's interesting is that I got a message. I'm sure it's not from the same person. I got a long PM concerned that we didn't hold somebody's feet to the fire and that we didn't go far enough. We're not going to please everybody. I understand that. But if we're annoying people on both extremes, then we are doing something right.
We're somewhere in the middle. I'm not sure where.
But if you're saying that me, Tenkar, the man who for years was running an ongoing, I don't want to even call it a gag, I was doing a weekly update on failed Kickstarters, and have gotten to the point where I can go and you can tell me about a failed Kickstarter. I can probably still spout off details about some of these ones. I'm infamous for it. I'm that effing cop.
And come on, right? Like, who else is effing doing this? I'm sorry, I've already sworn once. Screw it, the damn broke. Who the fuck else is doing this?
Right.
Nobody else is fucking doing this.
No.
You don't see this covered on Ian World. You don't. I mean, truthfully, if I owned goddamn Ian World, it would be the first fucking thing you see is the failed Kickstarter list and who's failed to deliver. And by the way, here are their names and here are their phone numbers, and you should call them and ask where your stuff is. Because that.
Yeah. And here's the thing now, and the argument I've gotten from others is, well, I appreciate you pointing out these failures, but it makes it harder for us legitimate Kickstarter, people to get our projects funded when you point out those bad actors. And you know what? I don't agree with that, because if I point out the bad actors, they should be avoiding the bad actors and looking for the people that are doing it the right way.
My God. Right. Let's do let's do Talking Crits Guide to Kickstarters. We'll do 5 simple rules for Kickstarters. 5 simple rules that should guide you to whether or not you should put your money into the Kickstarter. Number 1, is the project already written, or are they claiming I'm sorry, let me get on camera. They're claiming they're going to write it once it's funded. Because if the answer is, I'll write it when it's funded, that is a one-way ticket to Belize and a nice vacation for the money. Don't do it. Don't do it. They're lying to you. They're not going to finish it. Ever.
Okay.
Who wants to go with number 2? I have ideas.
Unfunded physical stretch goals. If you want to guarantee that a Kickstarter that funds will not deliver, or that somebody's going to put their hand out for more money, have physical product stretch goals that you didn't account initially. You just figure, hope and a prayer, it's all going to work out in the end. And I got news for you. It fucking won't.
Hope's not a plan. God damn it. All right. So, Mike, what do you got for number 3? Mike's unconscious. Mike's like, oh my God.
Kickstarter have a great idea.
I have great ideas, and they usually involve twins, and it's never going to happen. Ever.
Ideas are usually on, the I'm not going to, but I'm
We're very thankful.
saying that's the way Kickstarters used to be. They send somebody and to this day you still there.
Oh God!
I've got an idea.
I have this great idea. I had great ideas when I was 10 years old with the Doublemint twins, and it never happened. Ever.
I'm surprised.
Okay.
I mean,
So, I'm just telling you, it didn't happen. My great ideas involving the Doublemint twins, or Farrah Fawcett, or like Christy Brinkley, or Hub and Help Me.
I had the
Paulina Porzakova.
And this
Look,
is fair together. Okay.
I got great ideas about Red Sonja. It ain't ever gonna happen. I'm just telling you. I got great ideas.
So yes, if they're basically run, not walk in the other direction, 90% chance it is never going.
Ever. Right?
Probably.
So then the other is rule number 4. Mm-hmm. If the Kickstarter you're looking at is too wide and too vague, and let me give you an example, right? So a couple of weeks ago, just within the past week, the Kickstarter for Dead Man's Hand ended. Now, Dead Man's Hand, if I am unaware of this product, Jim, please inform me of what that is. Dead Man's Hand is a 28 millimeter cowboy fighting game. You play with miniatures. You play with little houses like the one I was building last night, and you do this. You set it up on a table, right? So Dead Man's Hand had a Kickstarter for plastic horses, for all of the figures in their first box set, all the gunfighters, except this time they're mounted on horses. So you could have them on horses, clippity clop, clippity clop, clippity clop, versus them just walking along being all angry and salty. And so, that's a nice, narrow, easy focus, right? I'm going to get the gunslingers, but mounted on horses. Well, that's cool. We make fun. I make fun of Steve Chenault and Troll Lord Games, who literally emails me more than Victoria's Secret ever thought about emailing me. And Victoria's great secret is she's a compulsive emailer. But Troll Lord makes her look like a piker. Absolutely like an amateur hour. But if you look at what Troll Lord does, Troll Lord takes a look at their product line and they do something very specific. If you look at Goodman Games, they look at something very specific. If you look at Swords and Wizardry, if you look at any of the things we're talking about, Frog God and so on, they take their thing, which is it's this building block out of the entire world. It's this little building block, and that's what they use for their Kickstarter. But if the Kickstarter is like, I am going to reveal my entire campaign world, and it will be magnificent, and you will have so much detail. Now, this does harken back to number one. If it ain't written, you shouldn't fund it. But really and truly, if the focus is as wide as the day is long, you should run away. You should absolutely run away. Because this isn't, hey, listen, I'm going to give you an adventure set in my magnificent campaign world that you will all want to play in. No, this is something that's just, you can't even get your hands around it, right? Well, if we hit all our stretch goals, everybody's going to get 1,500 miniatures. Bullshit. Bullshit, 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 bullshit. Nobody's going to get anything, right? Again, they're off to like Costa Rica or somewhere with your money because you ain't going to get anything. Now, what should we have as number 5?
Oh, I got number 5.
Hit me.
And 5 is like a 5A and a 5B. All right, because both of these are danger signs, especially for an RPG Kickstarter. 1, if it's a box set, it's a warning. Not necessarily a killer on its own, but it's a warning. If they're offering physical miniatures, it's a warning.
Yes.
But if you combine the two, unless you're Zach Glazer, fucking run away.
The problem is, and I would sum this rule up as, don't cross the fucking streams.
Ooh, yes.
Don't cross the goddamn streams. Like, because the problem is, RPG companies, they do great RPGs. And miniature companies are like, hey, we make great miniatures. And do me a favor, keep your goddamn chocolate out of the goddamn peanut butter. Just don't do it. Don't do it. Because every time there's somebody's like, we're going to do a Kickstarter goal. And I'm sorry, one of our stretch goals on our Kickstarter is we're going to have these amazing miniatures, right? And the problem is somebody has to figure out who is going to be able to sculpt these, who's going to be able to make them, who's going to make them in the quantity we need, and how do we make sure we don't lose our shirts in all of the expensive parts of this process. And I got news for you. Most RPG companies, this is right over their skill set. And it ain't going to happen. But don't cross the streams. Don't cross the streams. Ever. Ever.
So, Mike, I'm going to make a suggestion. Kill your camera, and maybe the bandwidth will be enough to carry your voice.
I might reboot and see if that helps. Let me reboot. You guys vamp.
So I'm angrier than I meant to be, and I didn't mean to be angry, but really and truly, like we have so many failed Kickstarters that truthfully, if people do this, I actually haven't, right? Both of my bad Kickstarters, one eventually shipped, and then the other eventually wrote me a check as a refund. And I've got a pretty good track record, but I'm also an insanely wary bastard. I'm an old wary bastard, right? Because I'm not throwing money at stuff that doesn't look like it's gonna, Troll Lord. I was one of the first people to back the very first Troll Lord Kickstarter because I knew Steve Chenault. And I know that with crowdfunding, you got to get a lot of momentum at the start if you really want to cross that goal. And I absolutely was thrilled to be like, I was backer number 1 for backer number 2 for Troll Lord for at least their first 5 projects. But then it starts snowballing, and I don't have to be that guy, right? I don't. And now, like, they never don't fund a project. But they've also built their business on fulfilling projects and fulfilling them in a timely manner, and they know what their costs are. They've done nothing but lower their costs. And again, with Steve Chenault, hope is not a plan. Hope is out the window because Steve knows to the dollar and penny what this stuff's going to cost, what it's going to cost to ship. And they were one of the first companies that were like, hey, we're not doing this free shipping bullshit. You're going to pay for all of it because we can't afford to. We want to stay in business.
And not only that, they were the only ones that were in a position to get Memorial Tomb out the door.
And I proposed that when it all hit the fan. I actually said to Steve, I think it was at GaryCon. I think it was at my first GaryCon. And I said, you're the only person who could possibly get this carcass across the finish line. And Steve was like, I don't know if I want to be a part of that. And
Right.
and to his credit, Steve's done some stuff publicly and done some stuff privately that he didn't have to do, but he's a decent guy and he has. And the Chenault brothers don't get enough credit for that. I'm a big believer in sort of watching out for people. He's back. He's back and only mildly blurry.
We shall see.
In black.
Sorry.
To say.
Anyway, so what else we got? We got a lot of stuff to talk about, but that's the rant's over, right?
Yeah.
And I just, if anybody thinks that Eric was soft on Ken Whitman, like I defy you. I just defy you, right? Because there's a difference between calling somebody out for failed Kickstarters and crossing a line where the questions you're asking and the points you're making are lost in the volume of your noise, because that's what it becomes, right? I think anybody who watches this show knows that you shouldn't trust Ken Whitman as far as you can throw it. But there are still people out there who don't know about Ken Whitman's past. And frankly, that's why what Eric has been doing for years and years and years about holding these people's feet to the fire, that's because when you search Ken Whitman on Google, guess what? There is a cornucopia of information available that should give you a bit of pause.
It's funny too, because I remember when Ken started referring to himself as Whitman.
Yes.
And I would refer to him in an article as Ken Whitman and Whitman and Ken Whitless. And I would alternate, and people go, you got to only refer to him as Ken Whitman, or people are going to forget who he is. It's like, no, you got to refer to him as everything he's referred to as, or else he's going to slip through the fingers of the internet. And this way, no matter how you search him, you're going to find him. And I think that's been an important thing. Ken didn't define himself as Whitman solely so he'd be more unique on the IMDb database. He didn't want to go to the end because Ken Whitman was well liked. He went because he became Whit because he had a reputation that was stepping in front of him when he was trying to make deals or get jobs. So the rebranding was done for a reason, certainly.
Well, and come on, like the failures of Ken Whitman, if you don't document this stuff, how do people know, right? That's just it. And he could say he's on a reform tour, but come on, right? Like there's a difference between the kid who stole $20 out of the communal lemonade fund that he was sharing with his friends, and things like Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, or anyway, I think we've talked enough about Whitman. I just really and truly though, I people don't reach out to me very often. I'm always like, oh, okay. Like, what do you have to say? Right. And usually there are things like, you're awfully loud and you scare me when you move your hands a lot. So I get that. But again, I would say, we don't go poking a bear and looking for a fight. Right. We really don't. People are like, hey, could I be on the show? Sure. That would be great. Let's have you on. Let's talk about stuff. And sometimes we talk about things they expect to talk about, and sometimes we talk about other things. And it's always very interesting to me to see how people are ready for some things, but they're not ready for others. And you should be interested in that too, gentle viewer. You should be interested in that too.
Can I ask a question?
So nice. Go ahead.
I want to ask both of you guys a question, because number one, it's probably better if you guys do most of the talking tonight if my internet's messed up. But both of you could answer this. Why do you think Whitman was on the show, wanted to be on the show? Eric?
I think one of the reasons is, and Ken said it himself, he's got a dozen games already written because he's a game designer. That's what motivates him, even if they're not published. So it means that he's got, in his mind, potential money. I would possibly refer to it as ways to separate people from their money, sitting on a shelf, waiting to get published. And I am sure he's seen how one of his earlier games grew, which was re-released by Steve Jackson Games as a Kickstarter. I don't believe that Ken got anything from that, but who knows? Um, was very successful. Now, was it successful because of the IP? Probably. But Ken wants to get back, my opinion, wants to get back into the gaming world, whether it's board games or whether it's RPGs. And he knows that people have kind of forgiven Gareth Skarka for being 10 years late. Maybe he can be saved. But Ken realizes he needs to uh, get his presence out there and be forgiven. And when I told him I wasn't going to take his apology, I didn't have to take it. I wasn't going to accept it. I didn't care about it. He PM'd Don afterwards and told Don that you can let Eric know that I forgive him his ignorance. I don't have ignorance. I have clarity.
So my 5 cent theory on this. So while Eric was talking, one of the things I did is I looked. A number of years ago, I had a conversation with Ken Whitman through Facebook Messenger. So this gives it was 8 years ago, and this was in the midst of Pencil Dice and so on and so forth. And throughout the conversation, you know, the standard circle of Ken Whitman came around, that Mark Miller was lying. All these other people were liars, that things had been made. He didn't know how to leverage the equipment and all the rest of it. So the question Mike asked was why did he want on the show? Why did he want on the show? And I think the Jim Kitchen Nickel theory on this is narcissistic sociopaths have to be the center of attention. Narcissistic sociopaths have to be in the spotlight, no matter what, doing whatever to be there.
Right.
And there's nothing worse for one of these sorts of people than being shunned and being unable to hide from their reputation and being dragged into the sunlight because they can't, I mean, once you pin them in the sun, they can't crawl back out, or they can't crawl away. And really and truly with Whitman, what is interesting is, you know, if you look at his Wikipedia article, which is not as honest as it should be,
right?
You know, he lists himself as being involved in the film industry, and I guess 3 years ago he released some small film somewhere or whatnot.
He was Axeman. He was Axeman.
No, but like he's a filmmaker now, and all of this stuff, the Ken Whitman reality distortion field is very similar to the dungeon hobby shop distortion field.
Right.
Like when reality collides with the distortion field, it's very upsetting. But Whitman has his version. He has his internal version of who he is. And one of the people that there used to be somebody very active on a group that I'm a part of that just tremendously went to bat to defend him constantly in public. It was a store owner. It was somebody that had given Whitman a job.
Oh yeah.
But he was just like, at a time I really needed him, Whitman was there.
Marcus King.
Yeah,
yes.
Marcus.
I wasn't going to say his name, but yes. But Marcus was absolutely a public defender of Whitman. And he's the only public defender of Whitman. And he's the only reason and I can remember Marcus saying, I've seen this, I've heard this, I've seen this, I've heard this. But all of these things that were being discussed about Whitman were in public were true. They were all true. Right. You know, you screwed over Jolly Blackburn, who's only one of the nicest people in the industry. And frankly, at that point, I got nothing. And so really, I think Ken was on the show because Ken is always going to be trying to rehabilitate the images of prior Ken. Maybe he's Whitman now. I don't give a shit. But Ken, the problem is Ken can't escape his past. Everybody makes mistakes. And we've all at some point or another made a mistake, or we've had a bad interaction with somebody. And then you get called out, you know, like years later, somebody says, "Hey, you were an asshole." And you're like, I have to own that. You're right. I was an asshole, and I'm sorry. But there's a difference between being an asshole and making mistakes and having foibles, and consciously taking money from people and never delivering the goods you promised. Lying about people in the industry who you have no reason to lie about, and who, frankly, you've dragged their name through the mud, but you're like, oh, but it's not me, it's them. Well, it's a lot of them. And almost all of their stories are the same, where you 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 say these things. You say these things about everybody around you. And again, right? Like, eventually where there's smoke, there's fire. And if enough people are pointing in one direction, you have to say, okay, is Mark Miller a liar? I've met Mark Miller. He's the nicest guy in the world. He comes to Gamehole Con. He's been to Gary Con. Like, he's just an unbelievably decent guy. If somebody has a bad word to say about Jolly Blackburn, like, I've met Jolly Blackburn a few times. I don't count myself as being one of his closest friends. But if you want to say bad things about Jolly Blackburn, I'm going to be the first person in line to say, shut the fuck up. Like, I don't understand this. And so when Ken came on here, this is Ken trying to be like, oh, it's going to be okay. It's not that bad. Look at me. Look, here I am. I'm the remorseful Ken Whitman. Whatever, right? But you can, I'm a big believer. I'm a giant believer in burn me once, shame on you. Burn me twice, shame on me. And if you try to burn me the third, the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth time, I got nothing, right?
No, you're right.
Nothing. So,
I mean, honestly, my bullshit meter was going off constantly with Ken. And listen, I was a cop for 20 years. I've been lied to by witnesses. I've been lied to by perps. I've been lied to by victims, and I've been lied to by members of the service, under oath, under compelled testimony. You know the tells. You know the way they build a lie. I'm not a lie detector. Though Ken is offered, by the way, to take a lie detector test. I don't think I mentioned that to you guys. He offered to take a lie detector test in Indianapolis, specifically, and that he would at our cost, not his, and he would answer any questions. So, is somebody trying to manipulate? Yes, certainly. I'm sure Ken's going to be going, oh, you offered to take a lie detector test, and they said no. Yeah, I'm not spending $4,000 to have somebody tell me, yeah, he's probably lying.
So really and truly, that's the other part, right? Is that Ken is that breed of sociopath where you can hold the black and white evidence in front of him. If you had him on the stand in a trial, he's the guy that you could say, here's your signature. Here it all is in black and white. And he's going to be like that Martin Short character that's chain smoking with the greasy hair and the glasses and say, well, that's what you say it is. And you're like, is this your signature? I don't know. Do you think it is? Right? Like, it's just a waste of time, because you're you're trying to fight with smoke in the air. And it's a joke. It's a complete joke. So screw it, right? He came on. He looked like an idiot. He looked like a fool. I mean, the only thing we got left is to get Lanasa on the show. So, Justin, I know you're watching. Why don't you just come on the show, and we'll ask you a bunch of questions, and then we'll get that out of the way. And truthfully, right, like, these two, Mike and Eric, can go away. It'll just be you and me, Justin, right? But I'll ask you all the questions that I want to ask, and I'll ask you all the questions that I'd love to have answers to. I was never under the pretense that the Dungeon Hobby Shop was being operated as a 501c, because every time somebody asked you that question, amazingly, you blocked them. So, okay, fine. We'll ask all sorts of questions about the Dungeon Hobby Shop. So go ahead, Justin, come on the show. You and I can sit down and we'll chat for about an hour, and then we'll move on from there. But all of these people, right? Every industry has these people. 30 some years ago, there used to be a distributor in the United States for games, and I won't say who they are, but the entire family was carnies. They literally had been
Whoa.
several generations of carnies, and then they decided they didn't want to be a part of the carny lifestyle. And lo and behold, they decided to found a game distribution business. And, I'm from Kentucky. And you can take the guy out of the trailer park, but there's always going to be a little bit of the trailer park in the guy. And you can take people out of the carny lifestyle, but there's always going to be a little bit of carny in the people. And every once in a while, I would be dealing with this distribution company, and I would ask a question that was just the most normal part of doing business. And the answer I would get would be like, Christ, I'm going to drop everything, paint my face, drink some Faygo, and become a juggalo, because that's about as much sense as it made. Insane Clown Posse. Let's go. Because kids, you look at me and you think juggalo, right? You look at me and you think, I wonder how magnets and gym work. I'm just curious. Like, how does that work? I don't understand. You okay, Mike?
No,
the first time I've made a juggalo reference on the show.
Well, that's why I thought it was funny, because such a juxtaposition there. I didn't figure you for a huge juggalo fan, but here we are.
Hey, man.
But no, you're right about every industry.
You can frequently go to the gatherings and you'll see me walking around looking like this. Hey, how you? The juggalos are all like, "Who the hell's that guy?"
Don't stop.
Is he a narc? He looks like a narc.
I pictured you in juggalo makeup right there.
Yeah, because that's what you want. That's going to be my special Christmas present for you next year. One episode, I'm just going to randomly show up in full ICP makeup, and you're just going to be like,
"No,
I took the wrong meds. I took my wife's meds."
So when I first got into buying and selling, trading online, about 94, 92, right when the internet was brand new, there was a bunch of us that kind of formed our own little informal group where we'd buy. We were the main dealers online. There's 5 of us. And I'm sorry, I don't remember. Me, Sages Guild, Justin, Jason Zavoda, a couple other guys. But there's this one guy, and for some reason, he would always find this really great stuff that he could sell online. And so for about 2 or 3 months, he sold stuff on the old AOL forums. Great, really hard to find stuff, near mint, whatever. Sold months, didn't ship at all. And so people, this is, but the internet just started. I mean, you don't have cell phones, whatever, where can we find this guy? Well, this business was run by trust back in the days. You sent checks or money orders. I got your check or money order. I put stuff in the mail and I sent it to you. It was all based on trust. So this guy, by doing this, messes it up for everybody, because everybody doesn't trust anybody anymore. And by the way, that's what these guys do also. People like Whitman, they mess it up for everybody, because when they don't fulfill Kickstarters, people don't invest in Kickstarters because they're scared of Kickstarters. So finally, this guy gets confronted at conventions, because he worked conventions, and he was the Whitman of the RPG the RPG used RPG industry. Because he would smooth talk them. We just had some issues. Because look, whatever you think of Whit, he's got in the ring. There's no way you get people to give you money like that and not have something going on. There's something working there. He's got something happen. Something's happened there that's making people trust him. And this guy was the same way. And so what he would do is he'd go, "Well, I tell you what, I'm sorry I didn't ship you that Vecna Lives, but I've got this other things in my booth. You go.
Would you like an Orange B3 and the Shrink?"
And so he would trade his way out of it. Well, he finally actually ended up going to jail, because somebody he did this enough that the attorney general of New Jersey, whatever, got enough complaints, they arrested him, and he had to pay restitution. But there's people like this, like you said, Jimmy. Every industry, there's a person that's going to take advantage of people's goodwill, and people want to trust you, and they want to believe what you're saying. This guy really does have,
it's got to be. It's got to be the case.
He's got a CD Greyhawk box set for $20. He said he did, and I sent him the money. And I know he said he had 20 of them. But he said he bought them all in a warehouse. I mean, there's always going to be that guy that's going to fall for it. And what can you do? You're going to have
right.
You're going to have that person. But that's why, and I have always respected and enjoyed when Eric does these kind of things. And people look over the years when Eric and I would do these shows, people were like, why do you spend so much time talking about people who put out crappy Kickstarters? We don't care about that. My God, you've talked about Gareth Skarka, 5 times last year. It's because no matter how much you say it, you've got to keep telling people. You got to keep telling
There's
people.
always new people coming into the hobby that don't understand that these guys are tools.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't know Gareth. I don't know Gareth, right? But I know that Far West it's taken too damn long to ship.
Listen, again,
I don't think it wasn't just that, Jim. It was the fact that the excuses and look, I'll give you and Eric and I have done this many times. We have given Benoit and Ernie credit because they literally came out and said, "Look, we don't have any money. We can't fulfill the Kickstarter."
No. They had money.
They had their shipping money. They never spent that much. They never spent the money. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
They had the money, but they couldn't put the project together.
But they couldn't get the stuff written on time, and it wasn't till the Chenaults came in and basically took over. He was able to get it out. And so that was one, at least they were open with saying, look, we have not spent the money. We have the money.
Wait a minute. Hey, Ty, you start that crap. We're going to start talking about natural hair color, buddy. Just take a step back. Take a step back.
I'm kidding. So you have to look. There's something to be said, and by the way, Eric, the Wandering Wizard is going to be at Page this year. You maybe go over and say hi to him, Mr.
I'll ask him how his dwarf,
the man that had the 3 failed Kickstarters. But you know what? And once again, Eric and I have always said this. We respected the guy. He came right out and said he's a terrible businessman. He lost everybody's money. He should never run a Kickstarter again. Hallelujah!
Nobody should ever give him money again. I mean.
Yes, look, at least be honest with yourself. If you can't be honest with us, be honest with yourself. And that's one thing that people like Whitman will not do is be honest with himself.
And I got this. I got our first hour off to a bit of a rant, and I'm sorry, right? But
all right.
But I feel passionately about this, right? Because I did not grow up with any sort of money, right? I have books that I bought because I cut a shit ton of grass when I was a kid, and every dollar went to the books that I bought and the D&D stuff that I bought, and I didn't have it all. Like, I just did not have it all. Like, my friends all had DM's guides before I ever did, and the only reason I got a DM's guide is because we were in California to visit my aunt, and my grandmother decided to take pity on me, and she found a B. Dalton that had the DM's guides on sale, and that's why I got my DM's guide. And so I remember, there are people out there that I'll fund that Kickstarter and that one and that one and that one and that one and that one, and they don't even blink, right? Kickstarter has some emblem for people that back 30 or 40 Kickstarters in a 6-week period or whatever. But there are a lot of people who have backed Kickstarters where $100 is $100. Mm-hmm. This is a big chunk of change to them. And it doesn't matter if they're single and they're trying to figure out what to do in life and they're working some dead end, low paying minimum wage job. It doesn't matter if you've got, you're married and you've got a kid and suddenly your expenses are they're all going into this little thing that you brought home from the hospital. I don't care the circumstances, but seriously, if you are trifling with the people who've made earnest attempts to back your project because all they want to do is support it and get it in the end, get the project shipping up to and you just blow them off. There is not a place on this earth I think you should be able to hide from the scorn and wrath I want to heap on you, because you are the lowest form of grifter in our industry. You are the person that we absolutely should castigate. I'm sorry that I can't tar and feather you and have you hanging from a pole in the middle of a town square where we can throw fruit at you. I really feel very strongly about this because if I had been that, if there had been Kickstarters in 1980 or 81 or 82, and I had somehow convinced my grandparents to throw $40 at some Kickstarter that never shipped, I got a book of grudges, and you would be first sentence, first chapter.
Absolutely.
And I would never forget this, ever, because you shouldn't. And I'll sort of wrap this up. We have other good stuff to talk about, but truthfully, every time one of these people exposes themselves, we need to drag them into the sun, screaming and crying, and never ever relent. And I don't know of any other channels that have taken this as seriously. I don't think that there are websites that take this seriously. I wish EN World would pick this up and run with this banner. I wish that they would simply ban these people from ever working in the industry again. And I'm old fashioned that way, because truthfully, salt in the earth.
By the way, Gary says castigate. That's a college word there.
Sorry.
We could have used castrate. I mean, it might have not similar. Well, would have been a bit more permanent.
No, I don't want to be perceived as wishing to inflict physical harm on anybody or making any kind of terroristic threats.
It's all with love. We do this with love. But by the way,
yes, you can feel the love.
Gary,
can you feel the love tonight?
I want to throw in real quick, FW area, or even if you aren't, we're having a North Texas RPG Con game day last weekend of January at the Westin Hotel. You can get a discount on tickets, or I'm sorry, on rooms if you go to the North Texas Facebook page, and there is a link there to just let everybody know that we expect a pretty good crowd there from what we've seen already. So I'll be running games there. Gary will be doing something there. And we expect to have everything from BattleTech to D&D to God knows what else going on.
I believe the phrase is BottleTech.
Right.
BottleTech will be yeah. Well, they didn't get as bodily last year when we did this, Jim. They kept it pretty clean last year. So maybe there won't be as many bottles there this year. So we'll see. Maybe some sipping cream. I don't know.
Okay, so let's talk about the product of the day on Amazon.
Okay.
Let's talk about the product. I have a visual example. Pardon me for a moment.
You do that, and I'll
bring this. By the way, this triggered me. I may have to go on a rant, one of Jim's rants, in a second after we do this.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Perhaps you're familiar with this weighty tome, The Making of the Original D&D, 1970-77, which Amazon has for 50% off today.
Damn.
And some of you, if you pull this up on Amazon, you might even get an extra 10%, unlike me, but like Eric. So if you don't own this book, you could go on Amazon right now and you can have a look and see if you can get it for the extra 10% off the already stonking good price of 50% off.
Ooh,
yep. That's an affiliate link I have on the bottom of the screen. I'm going to put it in the chat. Just let you, if you're going to buy it, you want to support the channel, that's great. I paid full price for the book, and it's worth full price. And yeah. I didn't adulterate it like some people claim they were going to do for a couple of pages or a couple of paragraphs that an editorial force decided to add that had no reason to be there. But it's actually why waste your money? It's a very good,
amazing book,
historical book. If you're looking at it, I'm a history major. I look at this. If I had something like this to refer to in my history classes, I would have been floored. But it's the quality of a good history book and the research that is done. Just because one asshole, Jason Tondro, I don't want to misname him. I want to make sure I got the right person I'm naming. Because he bragged about it on a video for Watsi that, yay, these guys were misogynist, sexist. We had to call it out. We couldn't take out things because they're historical. So we had to call it out. So you know exactly who was behind the offensive words. Just saying.
Can I so I guess I kind of put this in the memory hole. and I hadn't thought about it for a while. But then I saw your link of 50% off. I thought, I really wanted to get that book, but I didn't want to give Watts any money because of this. And I had a talk with one of the co-authors of this who said that they were not responsible for this Jason Tentaro rant, and I believe them. So I thought, okay, well, I'll drop $50. I figured it would go on sale eventually. I had forgotten how ridiculous this introduction that Jason wrote was. I have it here in front of me. Can I read some parts of it? Because
I think it's time for a recitation.
I just had to bathe once again in the infuriation that I felt when I first read this, and couldn't believe that a scholarly work by somebody as respected as John Peterson, who I believe, and I've heard had no part in putting this in the book. It doesn't belong here. There's no point in this except for pure and simple virtue signaling. There's no point in this being in here. But I'm going to read you a little bit of it. So he's rolling along in his introduction, talking about what makes D&D great and how they spent no expense reproducing this in its printed form. The early rules are very influential. This is a great historical document. Blah blah. Then he takes a little bit of a left turn here. He says this book presents D&D as it was first imagined, warts and all. What sort of warts are we talking about? Okay. One example is including creatures from utter intellectual properties, such as J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth without permission. In later printings in D&D, Balrogs, Hobbits, and Ents were renamed Balars, Halflings, and Treants to avoid these corporations. We all know when that happened. That happened, I believe, the first and third printing, and after that it was removed. So I think everything from the fourth printing of the white box on, that's not there. But then he continues. Some language in the first iteration of D&D presents a moral quandary. The documents reproduced in this book include many pages of charts and tables alongside lists of monster spells and magic items. But that game content also includes a virtual category of insensitive and derogatory language. Words that are casually hurtful to anyone with a physical or mental disability who happens to be of old, fat, not conventionally attractive, indigenous, black, or a woman. Okay. Are we not talking about pretty much anything written in the 1960s, 70s, or 80s?
But there's a couple of things that puzzle me about that. And I have a legitimate question. I don't remember. That doesn't mean it wasn't there, but I don't remember derogatory language around indigenous peoples, people of African descent, or even women.
Well, Jim, a few examples are given, and these are really tenuous examples. But I'm going to give you what Jason gives you there. Historical gamers in America were predominantly white middle-class men, which is true. It isn't surprising they would dub a class of soldiers the fighting man. Is that actually offensive?
I mean, honestly, there were no women in combat roles in, I think, any country in the 1970s.
How is that?
Israel might have been different, but
all right, Israel. True.
And then the page of Greyhawk, the description of the Queen of Chaotic Dragons includes a dig at women's lib. And this is obviously misogyny, but it wasn't really a dig. Means it's kind of a joke, right? It was kind of a wink joke. It wasn't what's the way I put it? It wasn't an evil-minded joke. You know what I'm saying? It was more of a wink, smile, nod joke. It wasn't you're beasts that so we're gonna say something about it. It wasn't that at all. If you find the original quote, that's not it. And so he goes on a rant about that. Also brings forth that slavery appears in original D&D not as a human tragedy that devastated generations over centuries, but as a simple numerical transaction. What? Wasn't there a whole series of modules that were written where the bad guys are slavers that you're supposed to kill? and take out the picture.
And wait a minute. Setting aside A1, 2, 3, and 4, wasn't there also for the 25th anniversary of D&D a return to the slavers?
Yes, Jim, there
I'm sorry.
was. So they didn't start hating this until recently. Then they also he goes on a little rant about the cultural appropriation of original D&D ranges from the bewildering, like naming every 6th level cleric a llama, to the staggering. Gods, demigods, and heroes, not reprinted in this book, he lets you know, includes game statistics for sacred figures revered by more than 1 billion people around the world. Were players expected to fight Vishnu, one of the principal deities of Hinduism, kill him, and loot his +3 sword of demon slayings? No, you're not supposed to kill. You're not supposed to kill the gods of the book. I know some ridiculous DMs and players may have, but that's not the point. And I just think it's so. Is this not nitpicky? Am I wrong, guys?
Here's the thing: if you're going to nitpick that, then why aren't you nitpicking the Norse gods and saying, and we still have adherents of the Norse religions, because you're not going to earn any points by pointing that out.
So then he goes on a little backpacking expedition here. Despite these shortcomings, D&D has always been a game about people choosing to be with someone unlike themselves and collaborating with strangers who become friends. It has slowly become more inclusive. And as the player base has become more diverse, the pool of creators who make the game has expanded to include people with a broader range of identities and backgrounds. And these new creators make the game more welcoming. The game has attracted new fans who in turn continue to make the game more inclusive. Backpack. This, I had forgotten how annoying and ridiculous and unnecessary and self-serving this stupid page is.
Yeah.
I really forgotten how unessential this was to anything that John wrote, how it's just tacked on. I mean, it has all the tacked onness of having a white wedding and a beggar coming in off the street and peeing on the middle of the floor. I mean, it just has no purpose in this. And and I'd forgotten how this is just takes me back to the whole 50th anniversary and what an absolute major cock up mess they've made of this, which they have. Where you have the 50th anniversary where they're releasing basically a new edition of the game, but the second book isn't even fucking out yet. And here we are, it's November. And we're going to wait for the third book into next year. They can't even put out the new set of books in the 50th anniversary year. The celebrations have been tepid at best.
Yeah.
What do we really have that's I mean, you're looking back at 50th anniversary in 10 years. What are you going to look at and say, wow, they put out blank? I tell you what, the 25th they did some kick-ass shit. They put out the big giant box set with all the reprints and modules in there. That was fucking awesome. That was really, really cool. They put out the return modules, Return to White Plume Mountain, Return to the Keep on the Borderlands, Return to the Tomb of Horrors. They were all pretty good. That was actually a pretty decent anniversary, 25th anniversary. What did they do for the 50th anniversary? I mean, Jim, Eric, anything just from like, wow, that was awesome, man. No.
Well, we've been letting others do the celebrating forum. And Peter has a very good comment. I want to get up on the screen if I can figure out how to get it there.
Yes.
There we go.
Exactly. Yes, thank you, Peter. That because that infuriates me too. The fact that they act like, look, we all have stories about our group. Look, I've told a story many times about females in my group. Back, I'm talking about like in 1981, I had a friend bring his girlfriend. He played twice. He didn't want to play anymore. She played with us for 2 years. This is back in 1980 when supposedly there was no females playing or no people of color were playing, it's bullshit. Every part of this is bullshit. This is people remembering with a jaundiced eye geared towards self-serving their own.
But Mike, this is people not actually doing a survey. This is people talking from their own experience. So now, if Jason Tondro played in a group that was universally white middle class, and he lived in a white middle class neighborhood, and that's all he experienced for 10 years of his initial gaming. That's what he saw. I gamed in Pennsylvania, which was similar to that, in the Poconos, but I gamed in New York, and my group was we tried having girls, they just never stuck around. But we had Black, Hispanic, Gentile, and Jew, Asian. It was a New York community. You gain with the people around you. That's
all right. I'll wade in. Hold on here. Let me. So I understand why they write this. I understand why he wrote this. I understand why he wrote this. I mean, first of all, let's talk about the book on its whole. If you tore this page out of the book's amazing.
Absolutely. And and Jim, if you remember, there was YouTube videos of people doing exactly that. They would tear the page out of the book and throw it away.
And so I'm a gigantic fan of John Peterson. I'm a gigantic fan of his work. I'm a great enthusiastic supporter of his work as a documentarian on the history of our hobby. And I think that you should look at this book as having a page you should not read. But let me discuss the page you shouldn't read. And so it's like the disclaimer. Somebody copied the disclaimer from the Amazon page. Wizards, there is an orthodoxy. And I'm sorry, let me preface this. Number one, anybody watching this show should say to themselves, there is racism and it is bad. Illinois Nazis really suck. Nazis anywhere suck. Mm-hmm. Supremacists suck. Anybody who wants to pick on anybody else for their ethnic, racial, religious heritage, you just suck, right? Let's just get this out of the way. Are things better than they used to be? Yes, because we had a civil rights movement. We have fought against laws that were unjust as a country. We have gone through a great deal of pain together as a country. And so let's get up to 1980 when Deities and Demigods came out. Let's talk about that. Or I'm sorry, they were actually citing the other book. But let's talk about that. I don't ever see these people talking about how horrific various ethnic groups are treated in books and cartoons and whatnot in Japan. And boy, howdy, if you think we clung to racist material past 1980, oh, buddy, there's a whole giant swath of this stuff. There's stuff all around the world that frankly boggles my mind. But at the time that this book was written, at the time this was written, the page that you read, the book that he references, the number of copies being sold of this book are in the thousands out of a country of roughly 200 some million. And I don't get why we want to cling to some of the small. We can hold up the examples and say these are bad, right? Like I don't want anybody who's Indian, who's a Hindu, to be upset with the inclusion of the Hindu gods. But truthfully, they weren't there to be slain so you could get their +3 sword. They were there because they're trying to fill out the book. And anything Hindu was probably a long way from what Lake Geneva, Wisconsin was like in 1978 or 79. And there wasn't an awareness, right? We all remember Apu on The Simpsons. And we all remember the stereotypes of the guy working at the 24-hour quickie mart, blah, 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 blah. And I have heard no shortage of people that I have worked with who found that stereotype to be pretty offensive. At the same time, they'll also, under their breath, particularly when I was in Canada, say, that looks exactly like my 24-hour set, that looked like the Raba outside of where I lived in Toronto and Mississauga. It looked like fill in the blank. That for whatever reason, that was a pretty accurate picture of what their local 24/7 gas station was. But we've moved past so much of this stuff. But you can't hold this up as they were setting out to be patently offensive. Okay, they were accidentally offensive. Maybe that's the phrase I'll use. And we have to say, but we've moved past that, right? I don't see anybody publishing anything today with trying to have success in the RPG industry where they really take a poke at any of the world's religions, right? Everybody remembers Charlie Hebdo. Everybody remembers how many people died in Paris because they decided to make fun of a specific religion where there doesn't seem to be much of a sense of humor.
Yep.
And a lot of people died. And that was a pretty big shot across the bow about like what does and does not fly in a lot of Western countries. I'm not trying to be overly dramatic. I'm not. But John Peterson doesn't deserve to have his work get a 1-star review. They don't. He doesn't. But this inclusion, and frankly, if you're going to cite that Gary and the others purposely, intently made fun of or were derogatory about this, and this, then I want your citations. I want your list of citations because I'll be the first one to look at it and go, that's horrific. That's terrible. I'm glad we're not doing that anymore. I'm glad we're not putting that in. I had a discussion with some folks about B3 the other night. And B3 got killed, not just because of some content that could have been taken offensively, but because it also made fun of the Blooms. It made fun of Brian. It made fun of Gary. There were illustrations that didn't fly. There's a whole story about it on the AKM. You could read about it. But John Peterson doesn't deserve to have 1-star reviews on this book. He doesn't deserve to have 2-star or 3-star or 4-star. If you love the original Dungeons and Dragons and you want a book that collects all of this and has this great example, this great look at history, I don't think that John is particularly thrilled about how this went. I don't think he's particularly thrilled about this page. You can ask him, but I know that John does not deserve that. He does not deserve that, and I think that's something that we should all sort of keep in mind. I'm glad to call out, the lug nut that wrote the page that the page of regret. I'm glad to do that and say not cool, but I don't think John Peterson's overall amazing work on this book deserves some of the scorn that's being heaped on him. And I hope that makes sense. I hope,
Yeah, you're right.
Nobody's perfect.
You're right. Should well, one page should that page doesn't.
No, I don't think it does. I don't think it does. And we're better than that. I'd like to believe that we're better than that. I really would. But here we are. Ty asked the question: does John publicly disavow this?
I'm just gonna let John Pete speak for himself.
Yeah, let's let John speak for himself on this. Don't this is John's issue if he wants to talk about it. This is me just saying I don't think John had anything to do with that page. Yeah. I don't think John had anything to do with that page. I do think that John produced a hell of a book per contract with WotC. It's a hell of a book.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Yeah.
It's not John.
Well, yeah. What I've heard through various sources is that after final edit, this was added. So, at which point, it's like here's your author's copy. So, but
and let's be clear about something else too. Again, I wanted to talk about orthodoxy. There's an orthodoxy that you have to apologize for the perceived misgivings of the past in order to try to move forward. I don't disagree with saying we made mistakes. We're trying to do better, and we're trying to move in a different direction. But I'm just not sure that this was the place or the time. Wizards leaned into lizards. I like that. Wizards leaned deeply into these disclaimers over the last couple of years, and I don't know why. I don't know why there's such a vehemence in some of this, because truthfully, there could be a page on the Wizards of the Coast website that has all the problematic things that came out of first edition or second edition D&D. And it could have specific examples and say, this is what was wrong. This was an illustration that we should have never had, or these were things that we should have never included. And going forward, we're going to try to make sure to never repeat some of these mistakes and simply leave it at that. But by having these constant callbacks, I don't want to get into political side of things, but we don't need this all the time. And there are people who will say, Jim, you're a white guy. You don't get it. You didn't grow up under what I grew up under. There's a framework that you don't understand. And I'm not going to disagree with you, but I will tell you that there's a point where there has to be a point somewhere where we drop this so that we can all sit at the table and play. And I, as the straight white male, am being asked to slow my roll, to accept this or accept that. And I'm all about having a really, really big game table that everybody can play at. I have said this over and over and over again. But I also don't know how you gain anything by constantly reminding people of how to be divisive about these sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in absolutes, right? I don't believe in absolutes. Well, I don't, right? I think pendulums swing. And I think the Wizards pendulum on this has swung as far as it possibly can in one direction. And eventually it's got to come back towards a center. And I don't know how many mistakes are they going to have to make to get there. We'll see. My son's in an anthropology course. And a lot of the times, as somebody who might be descended from English settlers, there's a lot of, do you realize that we brought smallpox? Do you realize that we did this and we did this to the people who were here before that? I can't fix that. None of us can fix that, right? None of us can actually go back in time and say, whoa, perhaps we should not put the Hindu gods into this. And frankly, most Americans that I know, like, their understanding of the Hindu panoply of deities probably begins and ends with Ganesh. They know the little elephant guy, and Kali maybe, but that's about it. And they don't understand, most of them don't understand how rich the heritage of religion is around the world. And that's okay. I don't expect them to. I'm not going to quiz you on your understanding of the Hindu gods and so on and so forth. But if you're at my table, if you're in my game, then I expect you to be reasonable with the other people, to be accepting of the other people. I expect you to not bring up a game that I wasn't responsible for the crafting of or the writing of. And that's just it, because we can't move forward if we're always going to be dragging backwards. That's just not making progress.
No, and that's a good point. But my overall issue, and it's been this way for years since Watsy's initial disclaimer, is that they don't disclaim anything in particular. They just disclaim the whole past,
right?
Or anything that may offend somebody. Hey, this person won't be offended by it, but their neighbor might be. So we're just going to say, we're going to throw everybody before us under the bus and apologize for everybody, and that's okay, because we're apologizing for everything and anything we may have done to possibly offend somebody, because offense is always on a personal level, and we can't predict who's going to be offended, who won't be. So we'll just apologize for everything, from fighting men to I'm sure druids are offensive to somebody. I mean, the Wiccans. I mean, the thing is, unless it's almost like the Ken Whitman apology, right? He's apologizing, but he didn't say really what his sins were. What he was apologizing for. So it wasn't heartfelt. It wasn't heartfelt.
No, and the other
watching it to get credit.
The other reason you'll never get an apology out of Ken Whitman, the reason you'll never get an apology out of Ken Whitman, and Ty as a lawyer will, Ty Beard, the partner of Lionel Hutz, will be glad to chime in on this, because Ty knows that the fundamental legal underpinning to an apology is an acceptance of responsibility. And that's why, like, one of the first things I drilled into my kid is, if you're ever in a car wreck, if you're ever in a fender bender or whatever, the first thing you say is not, "I'm sorry." Because if you say you're sorry, that's an admission of guilt. What you say is, "Do you have a driver's license and car insurance?" "I do. Let me give you that information." But you don't talk anything about "I'm sorry." You don't talk about responsibility. You simply say those words, and you shut up until the cops come and start to fill out the report and ask you what happened.
And I got to laugh, because this actually happened to me, oh my God, close to 20 years ago. I got into an accident with my son's mother. Car went through a light, never saw the light, young driver, and both cars disabled. And I'm like, what happened? He goes, "I'm so sorry, I didn't see the light." Fine. The cop showed up real quickly, and I just said, "Listen, do me a favor, ask him what happened," because he told me he was sorry and didn't see the light. And sure enough, the kid was very honest. God bless him. His father came to the scene, was not happy his son was honest. But my insurance covered everything, and what they didn't cover, his insurance covered, because he was liable. So yes, legal advice: keep your mouth shut.
But I think, another thing is, I think a big part of this is, again, there is, and somebody said, Mike, I think, said virtue signaling. Virtue signaling, I think if you're virtuous, you don't have to signal. Like, you don't have to signal. You don't have to tell people, "By the way, I'm an amazing, virtuous person," because frankly, that you're going to break your arm patting yourself on the back. And I'm unaccepting of that. I think if you go out to do good deeds, or you set out to do good deeds, you should not be the person standing on a platform saying, "Look at me, I did these amazing good deeds. Look at how awesome I am in the good deeds that I've done," because that's just equally offensive. However, we have at a corporate level, from Hasbro on down, we have at several corporate levels, we've seen this embrace of a culture of, well, what we're seeing from Wizards and what we're seeing from other folks or other companies. And I think, again, I'll say it, I think the pendulum swang too far, and it's going to come back. I used to really like the advice about, what's the advice you give public companies about political donations? And that keyword is don't get involved in this. As a public company, don't do this, because you're only going to make half of the country angry. And this is why Michael Jordan was like, other people want to buy shoes besides this one side of the demographic. Like just don't get into this, because you risk a fire. You can start a fire, but the problem is you risk it getting out of hand and suddenly having effects you don't expect. And truthfully, they don't believe that these kinds of disclaimers or that kind of page in John Peterson's otherwise amazing book will have any kind of impact. But will it? Won't it? Time will tell.
So,
look at that.
Appreciate that.
I hope I make sense. I really do, because come on, I'm a white guy in my 50s, and I've seen it all. And I've been around a lot of stuff, right? And I'll be the first to talk about, I moved from Eastern Kentucky to the west side of Baltimore. And if you don't think there was a bit of a flip-flop in the racial demographics, I got news for you. I was the odd man out. And that's okay, right? Because it forces you to grow. It forces you to see stuff. It forces you to hear stuff that you might not have heard before. But we as a hobby have to put this stuff behind us. because we're never going to be able to be a more perfect union if we keep getting hung up on this past in this way that simply is making people I don't see the reason to do this. I just don't. I don't think I'm soft on this. I think the problem is that I'm not as hard as people would like.
I want to say something about virtue signaling. I don't like to use that term necessarily because I think it's one of those terms like there's a lot of terms now that people overuse that become meaningless. I look at that as that's different than being actually remorseful about something and wanting to change. There's two different things. Virtue signaling means we really don't care that much, but we want you to think we care. Whereas the difference is people that really care and say, we really are genuinely remorseful for this, and we'd like to make it as however possible. And I'm sorry, maybe I'm wrong, but WotC's efforts in this regard strike me as not necessarily serious. We want to appear like we really are. And look, they've made this point over and over again, which is why I don't think they're serious about it when they do ridiculous things like black people, and we decided that, and so we're when they do stuff like that, it tells me they're not serious about this. They're not seriously remorseful about anything. They just want to appear remorseful. So maybe I'm wrong, but that's just my feeling.
No, and I don't disagree with you because they clearly believe that this is you don't publish something without every word in it being something you want in print. You don't publish a module or adventure because it's gone through every layer of editorial. It's gone through layout. It's gone through people who've checked the copy before the copy ever got laid out. It's gone through multiple hands. And somebody finally read this to make sure that this is exactly what we want to be sending out to represent what we want. And somebody made conscious decisions. But my point of talking about companies earlier and how companies have leaned into this is exactly what Fugly's saying is corporate remorse is not remorseful. You're right, because it is at certain level pandering. It is at a certain level this just there are people that need to see this. There are people that need to see this. And we are including this because those people might not buy this book if we did not have this page in it. We don't want to be seen. They don't want to be seen to that section of the audience as putting this under the rug or covering it up when truthfully, this is something we all need to talk about. We don't need to talk about it.
And we're telling you here, we're saying buy the book. We think it's a great book, and I'm going to buy. I was absolutely 100% not going to buy it. I had a conversation with someone I won't go into at Gamehole Con that changed my mind because I realized that perhaps this was placed in the book without the knowledge of other people involved, and so I for $50, it's a hell of a buy for $50, folks.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's a steal for $50.
Yeah, and I think that that it was. I just had a visceral reaction because when I saw the link by Eric and then I followed it, and all these memories came back up of, oh, this is why I absolutely detested this book because of this pandering, ridiculous, yammering 3 paragraphs that were stuck in the middle of an otherwise amazingly interesting book. But I'm just letting you know, don't let that stop you from getting the book. If you feel like that page is bothering you, tear the page out. I saw people on YouTube doing it.
It's an enormous book.
Tear the page out, throw it in the trash, burn it in the fireplace, and then just go on and read the rest of it.
So let's talk about the most recent point. But why buy the book and give WotC the money? Listen, I got news for you.
WotC already got the money.
WotC got the money as soon as Amazon got it in the warehouse.
Yeah.
Right. Amazon's taken a look at how slow these have been selling and said, let's get these out for Black Friday. Mm-hmm. Let's get these gone because it's not selling as fast as they would like. Mm-hmm. And that's it.
Huh. It's weird.
They already made the money.
It's almost like if you insult your audience, they don't want to buy your product.
And I got news for you. Since we began discussing this link this afternoon, the number sold, the percentage sold hasn't moved.
Nope. 11%.
Not one iota.
Ouch.
And you know what? Okay. Maybe they'll refresh the numbers tomorrow and I'll be surprised and it'll be at 78% of the deal. But it ain't moving that quick.
Mm.
And again, I'm telling you, if you don't own the books that they're talking about, if you would like to read John Peterson's historical context on this is the cheapest this flipping book has been since most of us who bought it the first time around paid $100 for it, or 90% or 75% or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, and that's it. But you can't go wrong. And come on, how much are they asking for the player's handbook? How much are they asking for the new DM's guide? You could have a hell of a lot more fun with this book than you could with either of those.
Dear God, don't. Yeah, we'll have to do a whole show on that because I've already heard some hair raising stories about the new player's handbook. Not all bad, but some puzzling. People are puzzled, to say the least. Some of the stuff.
I think again, they've decided who their key market is. Right? They've decided who their key market is, and it isn't 50 to 60-year-old white guys anymore. Okay. Yeah. It can't be. It cannot be. Our hobby has changed too much in too many ways, and it should have changed a long time ago. I'm sorry. And when I say that, I mean our hobby needed to get bigger and bigger and bigger because, frankly, got tired of playing with the same people every flipping time I'd go to a table. Right? The bigger the hobby, the healthier the hobby, because there are things that show up out of the blue, right? That you're staggered by, right? Who in the chat has played Delta Green or likes Delta Green? And come on, right? Delta Green absolutely embodies everything about the 90s and conspiracy theory and government and the mythos and so on and so forth. I think in some ways at the time, a few years out past its release, it was a bit dated. But Delta Green has refreshed itself, and Delta Green has new authors, and Delta Green has evolved. We can look at whatever we want to find something and nitpick it. But the fact of the matter is Dungeons and Dragons created this amazing hobby that we're a part of and that we love. And that's the greatest thing. That's the greatest gift of D&D. Not only did it create an entire genre of gaming that never existed before, but once that pebble hit the water, the ripples have just continued to generate whatever. I think people had written Pinnacle off after Deadlands had come and gone, right? Pinnacle, people are like, oh, Pinnacle's had their hit, right? Pinnacle's had their success. I don't see anybody saying that about Savage Worlds, Pinnacle came out with Savage Worlds and has been absolutely knocking it out of the park. I think they've got another Kickstarter for another one of the Rifts books, which is great, And again, if you had told me that 25 years ago, Kevin Simbita would be willing to let another publisher publish a Rifts book, I would not have bet any money on that because famously, he was a jackass, right? We can record you for this convention. The hell you will. It wasn't in my contract. Actually, it was in your contract. Here's your contract. Screw you. I'm leaving. I'm not going to be filmed. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for demonstrating the worst qualities of a game designer. But you know what? They were on top of the world until they weren't. And then they discovered the long, slow crawl back to success. Now, some embezzlement happened that didn't help things in the matter.
Oh, I remember that one. Yeah.
Yes, right. But come on, we have long memories. We have long memories because we're trying to learn lessons. And I remember trying to introduce a guy named Amir Zafrenchi, who was a refugee from Iran, and trying to introduce him to Dungeons and Dragons. And he could speak English. It was a little sketchy, but he understood some English. But you know what he got? He got Killing Monsters and he got Getting Treasure. And Killing Monsters and Getting Treasure translates no matter where you are in the world. And that's the joy of it, right? All this stuff. I think, again, we are cursed with living in the golden age of role-playing games, miniatures, and terrain. It's never been better. I have a little cowboy building that I was putting together last night. And if you had told me 35 years ago I would be able to buy this and I could make a 1-story building or a 2-story building, and I could have little boardwalks and I could have stairs for it. Oh my God, Becky, I did not believe you when you told me that. But it's astounding. It's absolutely astounding. We have dice tower. My God, I would love to see a chart on the proliferation of dice towers in the last decade. Everybody is like, oh, let me show you my collection of dice towers. I'm like, dude, I have one dice tower. I'm sorry, I have one dice tower that I might be willing to use, but I have like a box of them that they just keep piling up. They're like, if I have too many dice, I'm starting to get too many dice towers. Mike, you look stunned.
No, I'm just remembering it at Gamehole Con. I'm just thinking about 1980 Bad Mike walking in and seeing all those dice towers and thinking, could there ever be this many dice towers in the world? And why do you even need a dice tower? You just roll the dice on the table back in 1980.
Because we all know those people that don't roll dice, they drop them, and they always get 6s. And that bastard in our gaming group, we got so sick of it, we started making him use a cup. And he was like, why do I have to use a cup? Because you drop the dice all the time, you shitty human being. This is why you I hate cheating. I hate cheating.
I have to say, so we use a dice tower at my table because there's 6 of us and we're all the age of 50 or more. And you don't know where the dice are going, Jim. You just have to guess. They could end up in the cat dish across the room. They could end up, in the pantry. If you're lucky, they just end up on the floor. And so we have to make dice towers mandatory at my table because you lose control of your dice rolling wrist at this age.
Okay. So I had an idea, and I thought that maybe as we're getting closer and closer to the holidays, I think one of the things we should do is I think we should make product suggestions, gift giving guides. And I have one tonight. I have one, and I wanted to talk about it briefly because I'm going to ask our beloved audience to think about embracing the world's fanciest toenail clippers. And when I say that, what I really mean is if you're a miniature person and you've ever cut things off of a sprue, let me get it over here. So if you've ever cut things off of a sprue, right? What do you use? You use a pair of clippers. And like most of us, I have a small shit ton of these, right? So, yes. And over the years, I probably have 20 or 30 of these things. But I want to share the only thing you should ever buy, the only miniature clippers to buy. And so let me show you the name. The name is God Hand.
Okay.
Ooh. Jim, you say, what's so fancy about these toenail clippers? Well, let me show you. These are the God Hand SPN-120s. And I say this with no reservation. These are the finest clippers I've ever owned. Sharp doesn't begin to convey their ability to cut through plastic. These are not just a hot knife through butter, but truthfully, if they were any sharper, they might accidentally split an atom and I would die in a nuclear explosion. These things are astounding. They have a little spring. You can see the little spring. Here, I'll use the light of my forehead to show you the spring. There's the little spring. They have a slight tensioner adjustment, but these are perfect. And so I have a pair of those. I have the SPN-120s, and then I have a pair of the PN-120s. Now, let me show you. You're like, well, Jim, I don't understand. Like, what's the difference, right? So, again, I can show you the angle.
Ooh, ah.
Ooh, ah, ooh, ah. But I'm telling you, if you have a miniature, if you have somebody in your life that works with miniatures, these are the clippers to buy. Now, you're going to go on Amazon and you're going to say, gosh, Jim, how much does a God Hand SPN-120 cost you? So let me double check and see before you take a look. Do you like how I'm prepared for this? Sorry. So currently on Amazon, the SPN 120 is $60. I know, $60. However, I'm telling you, you will never, ever, ever, ever need another pair of fine clippers. And so, if I may demonstrate how sad I am.
Wow.
This is my clipper rack.
Oh my
My
God.
God.
Right. So okay.
Dude.
So why does Jim have a clipper rack? Why is Jim so sad that he has a clipper
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday,
Okay.
Thursday.
So these are the shitty ones I couldn't give a crap about. I've had them for 20 years. They're labeled as Euro Tool, but you can order these things from offshore all day long, and they're crap. And all I ever do with this is for the big hog cuts. If I'm going to cut if I'm going to cut a small frame out of a larger frame, and I'm going to go through the big stuff, this is what I use. Then I have two inexpensively priced little clippers that again, if you look at these, if you look at these, you can see how that one's sort of rounded, and you can see how this one's much finer, right? And again, these are not for removing the parts off of the sprue. These are simply about getting the assemblies where you can get at them with the better clips. And so then when you get to it's time to actually cut it off, that's where the God hands come in. Now, somebody's like, well, Jim, why would you use that? And I'll show you exactly why I would use that. This is a part I was trimming last night. And if you look right at my finger, you can see that that's where I just did a hog cut off of the sprue with one of the larger ones. And it left that little thing that you can actually feel with your finger. If you use the God hands, you don't even wind up with that. And that saves me time. There's one thing miniature gamers don't have a lot of, it's time. Because we're never going to get anything done. And the only way we can get things done is by actually getting some of our time back. And so that's my recommendation. If you have a miniature gamer in your life, they work with plastic miniatures or model kits, right? You got the uncle that builds cars or tanks or something, whatever it is. If somebody's working with plastic models, they cut off a sprue, get them a pair of God hand clippers, make their day. It's the best $60 you could possibly spend. There's all sorts of places on the internet that have it. That's why I didn't have a link or anything ready, but God hand SPN-120 or PN-120. The S is the better one. But they're just razor sharp. They're stupid sharp. And my wholehearted product endorsement for a Christmas present.
I've got an idea for a Christmas present. While you were talking, Jim, I just thought of something.
Sure.
And I was thinking of my group, and so I just had that little story about how we throw dice everywhere, and so we have to use dice towers. So this is my daughter years ago got me a bunch of these steel, stainless steel cups that have the little lid on them, which you can shut, because I spill drinks all the time. I'm always spilling my drink, knocking drinks over. This way, I spilled this today, but guess what? I had it shut, didn't spill over. If you have a group like I do, that at least once every 2 sessions they spill a drink on the table, on their character sheets, on the map you're using, et cetera, you know the drill. You can buy. They don't just have. Look, I'm a basic guy. This is just stainless steel, but I have a decorated one that my daughter decorated for me years ago. It's gorgeous. It has the NTRPG Con logo on it. She painted it. It looks great. You can buy D&D themed cups like this to give to everybody at your table with the little shutting mechanism. And guess what? When they get over exuberant and throw their dice or jump up or say you're a terrible DM and hit the table, they're not going to make a mess because it's going to knock it over and not spill. And I just thought, I think my group would love to have some D&D themed cups, and I'm going to look online, see what I can find after this show, because I think that would be a great gift for my group, and it's something that's out of the ordinary that they don't have and they haven't thought about. But I'm going to look. I'm going to see what I can find when it comes D&D oriented, because that's something that every gamer, look, if you have a drink, I have a rule when I play convention games: no open drinks at the table. By open, I mean no drink without a lid on it at the table. I have seen every sort of accident in my 30 years, 40 years of running games at conventions.
Oh yeah.
And let's not let this opportunity to go by to remember the first ever Titan Slugathon event at Gen Con, where the last two guys had battled their way through the ladder, and it was down to them, and everybody's watching, and one of the yahoos spilled his drink, and that's when they discovered that the counters literally were water soluble, and all the ink ran off of the counters.
Oh dear God!
Just like that.
Ooh.
Yes, and it's one of the great stories in wargaming history, right? That like the game was halfway through, everybody was excited, and then the Coke or Pepsi hit the board, and whoop, it was over. It was completely over.
Oh no,
I love that.
Yeah, well, you look. Who among us have not bought an old player's handbook / dungeon master guide / monster manual with drink stains on it? So
yeah, or the ring from where somebody used it as a coaster. My beloved Micronauts #2, like unbelievably one of my favorite comic books as a kid. I lent it to my friend Mike, and Mike's dad used it as a damn coaster. When I got it back, it got a big old wet ring in the middle of it. And I'm like, your dad owes me a comic.
Just to let you know, I just pulled it up. Dungeons and Dragons dice cups, dishwasher safe, edge tumblers. There are many varieties on Etsy, on eBay, and on Amazon. So good luck. Go for it. This is a gift that your players or loved one will probably not be expecting. So they probably don't have 10 of these at home. But yes, they probably have dice towers. They probably have God knows how many sets of dice. But they probably don't have a D&D themed cup. As a matter of fact, I'm probably going to buy one for myself now, because this is utilitarian, it doesn't look kick-ass cool.
Right.
So yes, it's very, very easy to find.
And I understand that I'm asking you to spend $60 on a pair of fancy toenail clippers, but they are really and truly the greatest toenail clippers you could ever buy anybody. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, I've given away 20 of these shitty ones, right? I kept ending up with them. People would be like, here, have samples, or here, take a look at these, and so on and so forth. And so, there's very few tools that I really feel like you absolutely have to have in your toolkit if you're going to work with plastic miniatures or model kits or whatnot. But that's one of them. I'm a big fan of the Citadel panel line removing tool, because it's a great tool to have and to hold. It fits well in your hand. You can really scrape mold lines off with it. It makes it super easy. They make a shorty version. They make a version that's about that long, and that is an atrocious waste of time. But this is worth its weight. I very rarely say that about anything Games Workshop makes, that it's worth the cost and the price. But I don't know of anybody else that makes a panel line tool. I'm sorry, that makes a mold line removal tool like this. I've always used a scalpel. I've always used a razor. I've got a scalpel here on my desk where I was working last night. But I actually prefer the mold line tool, because you can get it scraped and flattened at the same time. It almost works like a plane, like an edge planer. So anyway, if you guys do you want us to do little Christmas gift suggestions next week? Because next week's show is going to be a barn burner.
Yeah, especially right before Black Friday, it might be a good idea.
Right. Yes. And folks, just so you all know, I got to start organizing for OSR Christmas, since this is the 20th. We'd like to kick it off by the 1st of the next month. So if you are a publisher, I'll probably, and you're in my inner circle, I'll probably be reaching out.
Bob, you asked if it works for metal. I don't think it works well for metal. I would still stick to a razor knife than I would a panel line or a mold line remover. I'm stuck on panel lining because I'm doing some panel lining. But yes, I'll put together a suggestion list, and maybe that's a big chunk of what we'll do next week. Is we'll do holiday shopping suggestions for role playing game and miniature and so on. But that would be very, very good. That would be great.
Very cool.
Yeah. Absolutely. Poor Kurt. Poor Kurt is just sitting over there, just like he's probably vibrating after tonight. I feel bad. What else? We had a couple other things to talk about. I'll just mention that my top secret game. We had another Monday night.
Ooh, yes.
Another Monday night game, and finally, I mean, again, I said this last week, so let me begin with no adventure survives contact with the party. And so what I would say is that at one point during the game, I mentioned that there were a half a dozen people involved in an incident, and one of the players are like, what are their names? And I literally just said, I'm not making up 6 names for inconsequential NPCs that have nothing to do with this adventure.
Oh, damn.
And they were like, oh. And I'm like, you're killing me. You're just killing me. And then another moment came where somebody was like, well, I think we've deduced who's responsible for all of this. And I said, not you. No, you haven't. Not in week 3. And they were sort of like, oh. But we added another player. We added another player who decided that there was fun being had and they would like to be a part of it. So we added another player, and I can't add any more because I got too many clowns coming out of the clown card. And then next week is the road race. Next week, the party is going to have it's go get 'em tough guys chasing after a bad guy in the middle of an antique car road rally. And the bad guys got a Jaguar XKE from the mid 60s, and our heroes are stuck in a mid 60s Ford Anglia. And if you don't know what that is, imagine what kind of shitbox Ford Europe sold before they came up with the Escort. And that's what the Anglia is, my friends. So I want you to imagine 3 enormous hulking gun-toting characters squeezed into an Econo box chasing after a Jaguar.
Oh my gosh.
Kuala Lumpur.
Do yourself a favor and look up Ford Anglia on Google.
Yes, it's spectacular. Wow. And so there's going to be mirth and merriment, mayhem and frivolity next week. And I cannot wait to just drop this all on. Yes, I should. That's right.
I'm quite bummed out because I'm out of town for the next 3 weeks and I will not be able to play D&D till I get back. So I'm kind of sad because we are hitting some really, really awesome parts of the campaign, and the group is really pumped up. And and you always like that moment when your group is really into it and they're like, I can't wait till we play again. And that's kind of how we left it. And so I was just kind of bummed out. I mean, I'm glad I'm on vacation at the beach. Right. Not really a vacation, but vacation. But yeah, it's tough to leave the group in that kind of a, well, I mean, I guess it's not that bad because they're wanting more, right? So you're leaving them saying, oh, wow, we want more. We can't wait for more. So yes, I'm excited to get back. But yeah, I'm having to live vicariously through you guys' description of your campaign.
I had a great compliment. Somebody said, the game is set in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in 1979. And I had somebody say, the amount of detail you have is astounding. It really feels like I'm in Kuala Lumpur in 1979, which is great. I know that's not true because if it was true, the first thing they do is they'd walk over to their thermostat and crank it up to about 88. But they're not going. But I've worked very, very hard to try to give them an adventure of that the hallmark of a great game, and it doesn't matter if it's your regular group, if it's a con game or whatever, but if you come out of it with stories that you have amongst your friends that you tell for years and you laugh about, right? We have for sale the amazing shirt of Edwin versus the Frost Giants.
Ooh,
and Edwin versus the Frost Giants is a direct result of stupidity in action at a con game. And so I'm hopeful that next week at some point, somebody is going to say something or do something that will live for time immemorial in this group of top secret players, that 10 years from now, somebody will say, do you remember when the seductress was driving the car and she failed the turn and they went into the lake? And everybody will be like, and then I will laugh. I will That's what but that's what a great role-playing game is. It's collaborative storytelling that you repeat for years and years when you really had something catch fire in a way you never expected.
Jim, it's interesting you talk about Top Secret and trying to get things correct like that, because when I used to run a lot of Call of Cthulhu, I had a whole little library of books about this tall about the 1920s, and one was a really interesting book. I can't remember the name. It's at my house, but it went over each decade of the 20s, or I'm sorry, each year of the 1920s, yep. And it told you what the movies were. I mean, each chapter, long chapter, each chapter is about 30 or 40 pages. But it told you what the movies were, what the inventions were, famous people, what they did, people that died, people that, I mean, it went to every aspect of that year. And I used the hell out of that book, Jim, because I wanted to make the games as accurate as possible. Even if the players, you can bullshit the players, sure. But I thought it was more to use things that actually happened. And if somebody said, was that true? I'd say, yeah, that really was the number one movie of whatever, 1923. Yeah. And so it sounds like you're doing the same thing with Top Secret. And even if your players don't absolutely know that you're doing it, I think it does add something to the game, the fact that you're doing that much research.
I loved it. One of the areas that they explored in week 2 was the IMR and the society, and they brushed shoulders with the Society for Tropical Medicine. And I had a lot of detail ready, right? So if people were starting to fire questions at me, I was just gonna be able to fire hose detail back at them. And I think that goes along with what really we know to be good role-playing game prep. You have to put prep time in for every hour of the game. You probably need to put 2 or 3 hours of prep time in, and you need to be ready and you need to be on your toes. And I've got stuff that they completely missed on week 1 and they drove past it on week 2, and they're just but we're starting to get all the threads connected now. And like they finally found the CIA station chief, and when they knocked on the door after one of them checked their perception rolls, they realized he had set up 2 claymores on either side of the sidewalk. And when he answered the door, he had the clacker in his hand. So like, our boy didn't come to play. Our boy was ready for shenanigans. So yeah. Okay. So there's a good point. So the Edwin shirt is only until Christmas.
Uh-oh.
And truthfully, this is your golden opportunity to capture and have one of Jeffrey Talanian's greatest observations ever. Rashness and foolish hardiness get their just desserts. So thank you for pointing that out. We should definitely make sure that's on your Christmas list. Edwin versus the Frost Giants. Oh, somebody also sent me a text message. They wanted to know the difference. With the God Hands, the SPN 120s are slightly smaller in length than the others. So if
use
you
the tool, whatever tool works for the job, Jim. You got to use the best.
Right. Some people like longer tools. Some people like
sometimes girth, sometimes
average tools.
You just never know. Yeah. I just reminded myself of one of my favorite games, Call of Cthulhu, was called the ballpoint pen game, because there's one point of the game where there's a ballpoint pen. When our players asked, was a ballpoint pen invented in the 20s? And I'm like, and this is before the internet, and I'm like, I'm not sure. And so, which sent us off on a hunt. And so instead of playing Call of Cthulhu that day, we started researching the ballpoint pen, which we found out it was invented in the 1800s, but wasn't commercially available till the 30s, I believe. But we determined that since it had actually been invented, there's a possibility that somebody could have a version of just a non-commercial version.
So I'm running Top Secret.
We were so excited to know that. We were so excited to learn that fact about history during that game of Call of Cthulhu.
I'm running Top Secret First Edition second printing, so the slightly corrected version. That's what we're running. We're not running Top Secret.
It's still a lot of math. No, but Jim has given up.
Oh God, the combat system. The combat system. I would rather take up self-piercing as a hobby than the combat system. It's just terrible, right? Because right. I mean, really and truly, I'd rather stand with a nail gun trying to get my nipples in alignment before I. Oh, it's just terrible. It's just terrible.
God bless you.
Awful. I don't know. What else have we got? Anything that's otherwise really pressing?
No. Oh, folks. I know there's a mass migration to Blue Sky. At Tenkar's Tavern is a fucking jackass impersonating me. At Tenkar is me. So if you see somebody going, is that Tenkar talking about maps? And I'm not talking about gaming maps, or making comments about genders and stuff. That's not me. That's a troll. That is somebody impersonating me, and hopefully that account gets taken down. But I don't know how fast Blue Sky is in this shit, so who knows?
I can't believe, Eric, that somebody would impersonate you on Blue Sky and say all these terrible things with the hopes that people would confuse that person for you. Shocked. I'm shocked and dismayed.
And actually, apparently, one person believed it was me because I got screenshots, but they were corrected by members of the community and said, if you think that's Tenkar, then you don't know Tenkar. And here's his real account. And they went, oh, shit, I just deleted it. All right, I'm deleting everything I was saying. But they're to try, right?
Think about how sad and pathetic this person's life must be that they're trying to impersonate Eric Tenkar on Blue Sky. Imagine the solitude and the desperation. And wait. Do you smell that whiff? That's a whiff of failure. I believe that's a whiff of failure as well. And wait a minute. Oh, I think that's dung. I'm fairly certain that's dung. Wait. Yes, they're wallowing in dung. It's heartbreaking, really. Heartbreaking.
I have no more space in my heart to break on this one.
But Eric does have an actual Blue Sky account.
Is it at Tenkar?
At Tenkar.
I got in early. Honestly, I've had it for months. Forgot about it because it was quieter than MeWe, which I often forget about. And then it's gotten a little lively. I guess some birds have flown into the sky and have made their announcements all over social media. So it's a little bit more lively. So I am there. So
I'm torn on the issue. It is good to know if a friend of yours is starting a Blue Sky account, but I do get a little tired of I'm announcing my departure here and going to Blue Sky.
I got news for you. Nobody at an airport says, I'm getting on the plane now. I'm getting on the plane. Fear not, citizens. I'm getting on the plane now. I mean, really and truly, if you feel that your bubble wrap has been punctured a couple of times and you need to go somewhere with thicker bubble wrap, have at it. I don't care. I'm glad for you. I'm happy for you. If this is the space you need to thrive and grow and become a mature, contributing person to this world, hot damn, have at it. But sweet Jesus, the never-ending, I journey to a far-off land and need you to know where I'm going. Yeah, I got it.
I got it. Bilbo, enjoy your journey.
I guess that means my Threads account is not going to be more popular now.
You know what? I did the smartest thing I possibly could before the election cycle. I went on a couple of these social media sites. I looked up really great AI art that it wasn't great, but it was plush like a lazy boy chair. Ooh. And I liked about 30 or 40 pictures on each one of the social media accounts. And guess what? I was spared so much content. I was spared election content. I was spared pictures of people shaving their heads or screaming. I didn't have pictures of people gloating. I missed all of that because literally my feed is something I can't even open in public anymore because it looks like a 14-year-old Japanese manga fan's dream. And you know what? In another month or two, I'll finally get rid of it all and I'll send it on its way. But it worked flawlessly.
Hey, leave those 14-year-old manga fans alone, okay?
Good Lord. Did I? Okay, I've got one story, and this is a great way to end the night.
All right.
So So you need to go back about 12 years ago, and my wife was going back and forth between Europe and South America and Asia, like 3 weeks out of the month. And one time she went over to China, and she always used to go through Narita. She would go through the Narita airport. And on the way back, she was in their bookstore. It was in the bookstore in Narita, and she got me a copy of Hobby Japan, and she got my son a copy of a big manga book. So it was like a lot of different short stories. What she missed was the fact that the deeper you went into the book, the more the age appropriate level rose. And so lo and behold, like she comes home on a Friday, she gets home just before he gets home from school. She says, "Here, I got him this. I got you this Hobby Japan. I'm going to go take a shower. I'll be down in a bit." I was like, "Okay, whatever." And I start thumbing through it. And I'm like, "Oh shit." And I ran to the closet and I pulled a toy out that I had earmarked for Christmas, and I brought it down. And when she came downstairs, I was like, "Here, you're going to give him this for you. This is the gift you got him." She says, "I didn't get him that. I got him the magazine." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you know what? He doesn't need to see the story about the 3 co-eds that go on a fishing boat and decide to explore other things besides fishing." And she was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yes. I don't think our son needs to see a 3-way with lesbians on a fishing boat." And she was like, "I didn't know." And I was like, "Clearly you didn't know. And that's why the 4th grader doesn't need to see it."
Jim, by any chance, you remember the title of this? I mean, I would just
now I know what to get you for Christmas.
Well, thank you.
I can't do any better. That's
right
all I
to
got.
the end, we leave you entertained.
Happy end. At least we had a happy ending there, and yes,
Oh.
it was a happy ending.
I did save the magazine. I'm going to give it to him when he turns 21.
Oh,
Okay.
oh, folks, thank you so much. We had a blast. We had a blast because of you all. So thank you. And yes, under strict instructions from Jim, I'm going to be labeling all of these Talking Crits into the Talking Crit podcast / channel within this channel. So it'll be done within the next day or two. The last couple of months already done. When Jim was running solo, I was like, "Oh, just do this real quick. I'll know when I got to come back and pay attention." I come on, you know, you got to squeeze.
Anyway,
anyway,
it's been a great night, and we'll write up our little 5 rules of Kickstarters. More than anything else, thanks for being patient with the rants. Next week we'll come back with some great gift ideas for the holidays. Yep. You know, more than anything else, call the people you love, tell them how important they are, and try to have an open seat at the table for everybody. Because you know what will make those idiots at Wizards angry? If we're nicer than they ever expect us to be.
Ooh, wow. Well,
so
I always find an open seat when I'm running at a convention. So
that's right.
See me. If you can squeeze a chair in, you're welcome. Folks, on that note, be safe, be well. God bless. Roll those dice, roll them well. Tomorrow night, it's going to be Don, Tom, and myself. I believe the random party is Friday night, and of course, Gamers Hell on